Rain was falling like broken glass, each drop cutting the silence that wrapped the street. I stood there, drenched, staring at the window that glowed faintly through the fog. That house had been empty for 10 years. I knew it. Everyone in town knew it. Yet there it was, a single, trembling light behind the curtain. My heart started to hammer. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I wanted to believe too much. But then the shadow moved. Slow, careful, like it knew I was watching. I took one step closer, my boots sinking into the mud, the sound swallowed by thunder. I had been following this trail for weeks, chasing whispers and half-truths, chasing the impossible. Now I was standing on its doorstep. The rain thickened, drumming against the wooden boards, and I thought about turning back, about walking away and forgetting the face that haunted my sleep. But something in that light called to me, something that promised answers, or maybe revenge. I touched the doorknob. It was cold, too cold, as if the house itself had no pulse. I listened. Nothing. Then, a sound, faint and rhythmic, like breathing through old paper. My flashlight flickered as I stepped inside. The smell hit first, dampness, metal, and dust that tasted like time. The floor creaked beneath my feet, and the air felt heavy, alive somehow. The hallway stretched into darkness, lined with photographs covered in grime. I wiped one clean. A woman, smiling, eyes sharp, like she was looking straight through me. Every frame showed her again, same woman, same smile, but the expressions changed. From joy to strain, from strain to terror, until the last one froze her in a silent scream. Beneath the photo, something was scratched into the wood. A date. Tomorrow. I took a step back, pulse racing, mind spinning through every possibility, none of them good. Thunder rolled again, shaking the glass, and the flashlight buzzed weakly in my hand. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft at first, coming from above. One step, then another. I tilted the light toward the stairs, its beam trembling with my hand. The step stopped. Then, a whisper, dry, broken, called out from the dark, "You're late." My breath froze in my chest. The door behind me slammed shut so hard the walls groaned. I spun around, but there was no one there. Only that flickering light upstairs, painting the walls in a pale, sick glow. I knew that whatever was waiting in that room wasn't just human. It wasn't chance that led me here. This house was expecting me. The photographs on the wall seemed to lean closer, the smiles twisting in the dim light. I took a deep breath, raised my flashlight again, and whispered to myself, "All right then, let's finish this." And with that, I started climbing the stairs, each step echoing like a countdown to something I didn't yet understand, something that had already begun. It started 3 weeks earlier, on a quiet morning that smelled like old coffee and rain. My office was still half asleep when the door opened, and she walked in, the kind of person who makes silence feel heavy. She wore a grey coat that looked a size too big and carried a leather folder pressed tight against her chest. "You're Detective Hale?" she asked. I nodded, motioning to the chair across my desk. "That's what the sign says," I replied. She sat without a word, her hands trembling slightly. I'd seen that before, fear trying to look like control. "My name is Evelyn Moore," she said finally. "I need your help. My sister, she's gone." I leaned back, watching her eyes. "Missing?" I asked. "Yes, but it's not like that. People think she left town. I know she didn't." She opened the folder, showing a stack of photographs. A woman with dark hair, kind eyes, and a calm smile. Her name was Clara. She disappeared a month ago. No one's seen her since. But last night, her voice shook. "Last night, I got a message from her number." That got my attention. A message? What did it say? She looked down. Just one sentence. "You're late." My pulse skipped. Something about that phrase didn't sit right. I'd heard it before, but I couldn't place where. "Did you show this to the police?" I asked. She shook her head. "They told me to forget it. They said the message was probably fake. But I know her handwriting, her tone, everything. It was her." She slid an address across the desk. "This is where we grew up. The house is empty now. I think she's there." I looked at the paper, an address on the edge of town, deep in the fog belt. I knew that street. It was one of those places the city forgot about. "All right," I said, closing my notebook. "I'll take the case." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. After she left, I sat there for a long while, staring at the name on the folder. Evelyn Moore. Clara Moore. The names meant nothing to me then. But the moment I saw that message, something twisted in my chest, a strange mix of curiosity and déjà vu. That night, I drove out to the address she'd given me. The road curved through miles of forest, the kind that swallowed sound. The air felt colder the closer I got. When I reached the house, I stopped. The place looked abandoned, windows boarded up, roof half collapsed. I stepped out, the ground soft from rain. There were no lights, no movement, just silence. I circled around the porch and found something odd. Footprints. 2 sets. One smaller, fresh. Another faint, older. They led toward the back door. I followed, flashlight cutting through the fog. Inside, the air was thick with dust. A table stood in the corner, covered with papers, photographs, and candles. Old, melted, unlit. I picked up one of the photos. It was the same woman from Evelyn's folder, Clara, standing beside someone whose face had been scratched out. My gut tightened. I searched the rest of the house, room by room. Most were empty, except for one upstairs. It looked like someone had been living there recently. A mattress on the floor, food wrappers, and a mirror leaning against the wall. Written on the mirror in what looked like red ink were 2 words: "Help her." My hands went cold. I stepped back, catching my reflection. Tired eyes, stubble, and behind me, something else. A blur. I spun around. Nothing. Only the creak of the floorboards. I left soon after, but the image burned in my mind. Back in my office, I started digging through local records, police reports, and missing person files. Clara Moore had worked as a photographer for a local newspaper. She'd written a few articles before she vanished, all about disappearances in the same part of town. Every story mentioned a single location, Hollow Street, same as the address Evelyn gave me. I printed everything, pinned the photos on the wall, and drew lines connecting them. Something was wrong. These cases weren't random. They formed a pattern. And at the center of it all was that same old house. I looked again at the message Evelyn received. "You're late." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Or maybe an invitation. For the next several days, I couldn't get that phrase out of my head. "You're late." It echoed in the quiet moments, between raindrops and streetlights, a whisper that refused to fade. I kept staring at the photographs pinned across my wall, trying to see what connected them. Every string led back to the same place, Hollow Street. That old house wasn't just part of the mystery. It was the center of it. By the 3rd night, I had filled my office with papers, sketches, notes, and police reports. Coffee cups surrounded me like evidence. Every missing person, every unexplained event from the last 10 years, circled the same few blocks of that forgotten neighborhood. I decided to go back. Maybe I was chasing a ghost, maybe worse, but I couldn't stop now. It was early morning when I reached the house again. The fog hung low, crawling along the ground like smoke. The rain had turned the dirt road into mud, swallowing my footsteps. When I pushed open the door, it groaned like something alive. The smell inside was stronger now, rot mixed with burned wood and something metallic. I swept my flashlight over the floorboards. Same photos on the walls. Same eerie silence. But this time, something small caught my eye. Behind a cracked mirror on the 2nd floor, One panel of wood was loose, slightly ajar. I pulled it free and found a box wedged inside the wall. Inside the box were three things: a few old rolls of camera film, a key, and a torn piece of paper with one line written in neat, careful letters: "Find what she saw." I took the film to a friend of mine, Marcus, who ran a tiny photo shop downtown. He was the kind of man who could make ghosts appear from chemicals and shadows. We developed the film together that night. I'll never forget the look on his face when the images appeared. The first few photos were ordinary, shots of streets, parks, and bridges. Then came the portraits. Clara Moore, Evelyn's missing sister. She stood smiling, sometimes near the old house, sometimes in places I recognized from the other disappearances. But as the film went on, her face began to fade. Each frame showed her more transparent, her features dissolving into the background. In the final photo, she was gone entirely. Only the house remained, standing under a grey sky. "These aren't accidents," Marcus muttered. "She wanted someone to see this." I asked him to make copies, then drove straight to Evelyn's apartment. The hallway lights flickered as I approached. Her door was open. I called her name, but the only reply was silence. The air smelled faintly of perfume and dust. Her living room was a mess, drawers open, paper scattered, as if she'd left in a hurry or someone had searched the place. On the table sat the leather folder she'd brought me days ago. Inside it was a single new page. A note, written in shaky, uneven handwriting: "She's not gone. She's waiting. Don't let her in." The last line was underlined twice. My chest tightened. I searched the whole apartment. Nothing. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just absence. The kind that feels heavy. I called the police again, but they didn't even take notes. "People disappear all the time," they said. Maybe she just left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office, staring at the film strips under the light, watching Clara's face fade frame by frame. I started to notice something strange in the backgrounds. Small distortions, shapes in the shadows, almost like figures. Not reflections, not tricks of light. Faces. Watching. Around 3 in the morning, someone knocked on my door. Soft, slow, like they didn't want to be heard. I grabbed my gun and opened it. No one was there. Only an envelope lay on the floor. My name was written across it in the same handwriting as the note from Evelyn's apartment. Inside was a single photograph. The house again, same angle, same light glowing in the window. But in this one, there was a figure standing in front of the door. My figure. Taken from behind. My stomach turned cold. The photo was recent, maybe taken hours ago. Someone had been following me, close enough to capture me without me noticing. I looked at the back of the photo. One word was written there in red ink: tomorrow. The next morning, I drove to the house for the third time. The fog was thicker, swallowing the world in silence. The door was already open, creaking softly. I stepped inside, the air colder than before. The light that always burned upstairs was gone now. Only shadows remained. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The mirror on the wall was shattered. The reflection broke into a dozen fragments, each one showing a different version of me: tired, frightened, hollow. Behind the shards, written in thick black strokes across the wall, were the words, "You're late." Beneath them, another line: "You should have come sooner." The letters were still wet. Someone had been here moments ago. My pulse roared in my ears. I turned slowly, the floor creaking under my boots, and saw movement down the hall, a faint figure disappearing behind a door. I followed, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The door led to a small attic room I hadn't seen before. Inside, dust swirled like smoke. There were photographs pinned across every wall, dozens of them. All of me, taken from different angles, different times. Standing outside my office, walking to my car, even sleeping at my desk. My mouth went dry. Whoever took them had been close for a long time. And then, in the corner of the room, I saw something else, an old camera sitting on a tripod, still aimed at the doorway. The film inside had just been used. When I looked through the viewfinder, I froze. The last photo wasn't empty. It showed me, standing right there, holding the camera, and behind me, a shadow that didn't belong. The shadow behind me didn't move, but I felt it breathing. The air inside that attic pressed down on my lungs until every inhale burned. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its weak beam cutting through the dust, slicing the darkness into trembling shapes that shifted when I blinked. I turned slowly. The space was empty. No one there. Only silence and the faint ticking of something unseen, like a clock with no face. I stood still, listening, waiting for a sound that didn't come. The old camera on the tripod stared at me like an open eye. Its lens glimmered faintly in the light, and for a moment, I could swear it moved. I reached out, rewound the film, and pulled it free. The metal was warm, too warm, as if someone had been touching it seconds before I entered. I slipped it into my coat pocket and stepped back toward the door, never turning my back to that corner. When I left the house, the fog had thickened, swallowing the world whole. My car waited under the crooked tree, its windows fogged from the inside. I drove away fast, refusing to look at the mirrors, though something in me whispered that I wasn't alone anymore. The ride back was silent, but I could still hear faint breathing, not mine, following the rhythm of the road. When I reached my office, I locked the door and set up the film to develop. The red light filled the room, bathing everything in the color of blood. The images appeared slowly, one by one, floating out of nothing like ghosts rising through water. The first few were what I expected: empty rooms, broken furniture, shadows too deep for the light to touch. But then came the last frames. The attic. Me. The camera pointed at my back. And behind me, in perfect focus, a figure. A woman. Thin, long hair spilling down her shoulders, her eyes pale and hollow. Clara Moore. Her expression was calm, almost gentle, but her presence felt wrong, like she didn't belong to any world I knew. In the final photo, her face filled the entire frame. She was looking straight at the lens, straight at me. On the wall behind her, written in smeared dark ink, were the words again, "You're late." I dropped the photograph and stumbled back. The red light flickered, once, twice, and went out. My reflection appeared in the window, but I wasn't alone in it. For just a heartbeat, another face stood beside mine, hers. Staring, silent, watching. Then it was gone. I sat there until morning, waiting for the light to make everything ordinary again, but it didn't. The feeling stayed. The cold stayed. Something in that house had followed me home. A week later, Marcus called. His voice shook. "The negatives," he said. "They are gone. Someone took them." He paused. But that's not all. There was a message on the counter, written on one of the prints. He hesitated before whispering. It said, "You shouldn't have looked." The line went dead. I never heard from Marcus again. I tried to move on, tried to bury the case under a pile of new ones. But some nights, when the office is dark and the rain hits the window just right, I still hear the soft click of a camera shutter from somewhere close, too close. Sometimes, when I walk past my reflection, I see two shapes instead of one. Her standing just behind me, her eyes fixed on mine, waiting. I went back to Hollow Street one final time before leaving the city for good. The house was quiet, empty, almost peaceful. The fog was gone, replaced by sunlight that looked too bright, too fake. I stood on the porch and placed the key on the step. Then I turned to leave. That's when I heard it, a soft voice behind me, almost kind. "Thank you," it whispered. I froze, every part of me screaming not to look back. But I did. The house was empty. Still, the front door had closed by itself. I walked away without looking again. Now, years later, when people ask why I stopped taking missing person cases, I tell them the truth. Some people aren't missing. They're waiting to be found by the wrong person. And when that happens, they don't come back alone. I keep the last photo in a drawer, locked and wrapped in black cloth. But sometimes, when I open it, I find a new one that I never took. The same house, the same light in the window, and me standing outside again. Only this time, there's someone beside me. Clara. Smiling,